Ashton Rich. It's crunch time.
It is crunch time here in Clarksville, Tennessee. Jeff Matthews, Ashton Rich, Brad Bader back in the studios of 91.9 FM. It has been quite a week in the sports world. Some things kind of moving around. We just heard some news. Austin Peay football, Austin Peay basketball, high school basketball, and then going into the NFL and for the offseason and figuring out free agency and everything of those matters. Definitely topics we will be discussing. But, of course, as always, Ashton, how was your week?
It has been 7 days.
It has been 7 days. Brad?
6.5.
6.5. Okay. Well,
Okay.
you know, our weeks all start differently. I think mine usually starts on Saturdays.
Nice.
I like to choose Saturdays
that's
as
what I
my
like to
starting
hear.
days. Let's jump into high school basketball. Ashton, you and I both covered high school basketball this past season. It is starting to wind down as a regional tournament has kind of already started in some areas, and now the state tournament going to be getting on pretty quickly. But, man, I don't know about you, but did you guys have as bad of a schedule as Cheatham County did?
No.
No, I think we might have had this conversation before because we had one of the worst COVID schedules ever.
Couldn't be me.
Thanks, I appreciate that. So last night, girls Cheatham County lost 54-50 to East Nashville. It was a pretty tight game. It was Cheatham County came out. They won, or they didn't win, obviously, but they led the game for I think all three quarters, I would say, and then come that fourth quarter, just kind of started trailing and then just couldn't get back on top. But now tonight, men's Sycamore is going to go up against East Nashville back in East Nashville. That game is at 7 p.m. When is your next game?
My next game is tonight. We have Northeast High School playing. The email just said CHS. I'm assuming it's Clarksville High School, but I think that the Northeast ladies team was not fortunate enough to make playoffs. Towards the end of the season, they really only have one or two players that are consistent scorers for them, and they towards the end of the season had one get hurt, and then literally the next game the other one get hurt, and so they were playing trying to play full high school games with only like 6 or 7 players even active. So towards the end of the season it was really rough for them. But the Northeast men's team, on the other hand, has been playing very well. They had a rough stretch in January where they lost a couple games in a row to Rossview and some teams like that, but bounced back strong. Last week played Lebanon High School and really kind of took them behind the woodshed, took care of business. The game ended up only being like a 10-point win, but it was much further away than that throughout the majority of the game. Your usual suspects, Isaiah Ferrier, Marcus Averhart, both played well. Jalen Miller had a crossover on one guy, and it was one of those things that you see on like a World Star where they everyone gets up and they put their arms behind them like this, and it made me go ooh when I saw it. So it was really nice.
There were a couple moments like that last night over in East Nashville. It was a lot. I tell you what, sometimes the atmosphere just gets incredible when you just have such an awesome gym when everybody's kind of into the game and it's a close game.
That last game that I had with Northeast was the first game where we've had an actual like fan base, like fans were allowed in. Yep. It was awesome because I do public address, so it was nice having a crowd to kind of feed off of for a game this season.
I bet it was. I think we had I think East Nashville's rules were, I think they said that they gave 62 tickets to each team.
Okay.
And so there was a decent amount of people. I mean, for it being the gym and then them closing off part of the seating. But, I mean, it still felt pretty nice. And, I mean, East Nashville fans came out, and they were awesome. I mean, they killed it for East Nashville.
One thing I wasn't a fan of, the way fans always sit kind of behind me so I can always hear them as well. Anytime someone took more than a step, like one step,
right.
walk,
yep.
And I was like, oh, guys, like, relax.
Yeah, easy. Take it easy.
There's no such thing as walking basketball anymore.
Last night, Cheatham County they drew like 4 charging fouls, like right off the bat in the first quarter, I think. I mean, It was wild to watch. And then, of course, after the third one,
all the fans
their whole
like,
fans were like, they were grilling these officials, and it was amazing. I love banter. I love doing that whole thing.
Oh, it's hilarious.
It's fun to watch. So, I mean, it was kind of wild to witness, but at the same time, as me and Justin were calling the game, we were pretty darn close and were able to actually see the plays, and they were all legit charging calls.
Sure,
I mean, they all were, but it just felt nice to be back in that banter kind of gym. And then East Nashville has an old school type of gym. It's just an older school.
Yeah.
So I always like that aura of being in like an older gym.
Yeah.
Well, let's move into Austin Peay sports. It has been kind of a wild weekend for Austin.
Couple days.
Yeah. We have quite a bit to cover, actually. So let's start with Austin P football, who just recently started their season back up. First game back did not go well, but this past weekend they did come out with a win, but not just a win. I mean, they have high honors from this last game.
Yes. So the game finished as a 27-20 contest, but in the first quarter, Austin P running back Brian Sneed took his first 3 touches to the fun zone, as the kids call it. So he had 6 touches for 204 yards in the first half, which is an FCS record. And then Jack McDonald as well, earning co-Defensive Player of the Week honors in the OVC itself. So really, though, if you watch the game, the only time Austin P scored was the Brian Sneed touches in the first quarter.
Right.
They scored again towards the end of the game on a C.J. Evans run.
What was his total yardage?
226, I believe.
226, okay.
Maybe. That's just me taking a wild guess at it. 'Cause
I haven't had a chance to look at the numbers on it. But
he was bottled up after besides those carries. I mean, Austin P offensively played bad. They did not play well at all in this game.
Really?
Could not throw the ball. Running game got stopped up towards.
And now, is that a quarterback issue, or is that a defensive? The defense was just better.
No comment.
No comment. Pleading the fifth. I like it. Well, I mean, with that, I mean, that's not the only thing Austin P has won honors in this week. I mean, we switch it over into the basketball world. We have Terry Taylor, who won OVC Player of the Year again. This is 2 years in a row of which he has done so, and this hasn't happened for some time.
No, the last time Austin P had a player win back-to-back OVC Player of the Year's honors was Otis Howard. And if you're not familiar with that name, that's because he was a 4th-round draft pick of the Detroit Pistons back in 1978. But Otis won back-to-back OVC Players of the Year in 77, 78, respectively. Terry Taylor now does it in 2020 and 2021, respectively. And I mean, what else? What other things can you say about Terry other than he's the GOAT? He's the greatest to ever play at Austin P.
That he is. I mean, do you see a future with him in the NBA?
I hope for one.
I do too.
We've had this discussion numerous times between
we
broadcasts and on the show. To me, he's just too much of a tweener. He's not quite quick enough to be a guard, and he's only about 6'5", 6'6", so he's not quite big enough to be a big man. I could see him making a career out of being a small ball big, especially with the NBA trending to more small ball lineups, as it were, positionless basketball and all that. So I could see him in a career as a small ball, maybe power forward, like a stretch 4 type thing. But I don't ever see him being, role player at best, a good quality bench guy, but I don't really ever see him being a star really in the NBA.
And unfortunately, I see the same thing. I think Terry Taylor plays probably some of the best basketball I've ever seen. And that I've been able to cover. Terry Taylor's probably been, and then, I think we did cover a John Morant game, and I think John Morant, is John Morant. He played lights out. But, Terry Taylor, I think, has so much potential. I think he could become a decent player in the NBA, but I think there's going to be a couple of years of playing either overseas or in the G League.
Sure.
To kind of build him up a little bit more to be a more competitive player, if that makes more sense.
Absolutely.
I think he's going to have a lot of time in the training room. I think he's going to have to build up a little bit of bit more muscle.
And there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
Alex Caruso, guard for the Lakers, I'm sure he's a social media darling, but he spent several years with the South Bay Lakers in the G League, and last year turned 27 a few days ago, I believe, and last year got. He's played big minutes. He's a great defensive player for the Lakers. He's an athletic guy. So, you can make a role off of niche skill sets in the NBA.
True. Jeremy Lin still plays in the...
He is in the G League
He is still in the G League. He had a couple minutes of fame.
Yes. No, Linsanity was a big deal back when we were in high school, I believe. It's been a long time ago.
It's been a hot minute.
We don't want to talk about all that.
We don't have to get
Brad,
into
what's
that
your
one.
comment on Linsanity?
Great.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen,
Brad
Bader. Hey,
the man
Brad
himself.
Bader, boys and girls. Let's jump over, and we're still on Austin P Sports. Austin P Baseball, not doing so hot at the beginning of the year. I know, Ashton, baseball is not the category.
I will let you handle it.
1-5 is Austin P's record right now. Not doing too hot. It is the beginning of the year. In baseball, you kind of play a lot of games, so
sure.
You have time to make it up. But tomorrow evening at 4:30, the Tennessee Vols are coming to Clark's Vegas, baby. Yikes. Number 17, Tennessee, taking on Austin P at Austin P's field at 4:30 tomorrow. I am probably going to try to get over there. It's been a while since I've had an opportunity to watch some baseball, so I'm kind of excited for baseball starting to pick back up, especially with spring training starting this past weekend.
I am swamped with papers. I will not be attending.
I am too. We have a couple of classes together, so it's definitely it's getting to that point where
it is that point.
Kind of the TV has to get turned off and
got to start having not as much fun.
Yeah,
so.
not as much fun towards the middle of the semester for some of us who got to do those 8-week-long courses. But
Yes.
with that being said, we still get opportunities to kind of watch a little
Just bring
bit.
your laptop to the field, Jeff.
Exactly. That's probably what
There
I
you
will
go.
do, honestly. I did that a couple years ago, actually. I wrote most of my papers at sporting events. Priorities. That's kind of how it goes. Moving on into still Austin P. The OVC tournament coming up this week. Austin P has the first round going up against Eastern Kentucky. They play tomorrow night. Austin P has the 6th seed. Eastern Kentucky has the 3 seed. And the winner of this game actually goes on to play either Moorhead, who's number 2, or Southeast Missouri, who's number 7. I would assume that Moorhead State will come out on top of that one.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to repeat my previous statement about Austin Peay baseball and say, yikes. It was a very strange year because coming into the season, we were expecting Austin Peay to be one of the more talented teams in the OVC, and it just has never really meshed.
I mean, who was Austin Peay missing? What do you think Austin Peay was missing this year that would have propelled them?
If it's been like years past, obviously we haven't covered Austin Peay basketball as part of our department and things this year. But if it's been like years past, to me, it's probably still secondary scoring behind Terry.
Yeah.
And Jordan Adams was supposed to be the guy, and he hasn't. I haven't, haven't
and he
been
was
able,
last year.
And he was last year, and I haven't been able to keep up with it as much this year. But I've been hearing a lot more of Mike Peake rather than him. So
there's definitely going to be. I think we could expect some changes to come up, especially with this being Terry Taylor's final season, I believe.
Needs to be.
He feels like he's been here forever.
Yeah.
But then he moves on, and then a couple other people are moving on. I mean, do you think next season is going to be a full rebuild for Austin Peay, or do you think Coach Fig has everything kind of built for the exit of Terry Taylor?
Time will tell.
Yeah,
That's all
I guess
got
you're
for
right.
You. It's time will tell.
I mean, Brad, any takes?
You all got to go sometime.
That's true. That's a true statement. We all got to go sometime.
Love it.
Whether that's to a different career or 6 feet in the ground, we all got to go sometime.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm just saying.
I'm getting morbid out here.
Morbid out here. Okay.
Realism.
Realistic expectations. But the OVC tournament going to be from, I believe they're doing 3rd through the 6th of March is going to be the dates for the tournament. And then still kind of unknown on the what the NCAA tournament is going to look like for March Madness. If COVID wise, I don't know how much media is going to be allowed or what games. And who knows? We could not even have an NCAA tournament again this year if COVID just decides to flare up again. Which hopefully that does not happen. But let's move over into the Major League National Football League. Biggest news right now, J.J. Watt does sign a deal. It's worth $31 million, 23 of which is guaranteed, going over to the Arizona Cardinals.
I think it's a good pickup for the Cardinals. That division, if you think about it, is really for the taking. Seattle is the bit unrest right now because Russell Wilson, at some point, I guess, has gotten fed up with how Pete Carroll runs the team, wanting to not let him cook and doing all kinds of other things. Because if Pete Carroll had it his way, the Seahawks would run the ball 50 times a game.
That's 100% true.
And you just don't do that when you have a top 3 quarterback in Russell Wilson. So
the
Seahawks are kind of a dumpster fire. The Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan both are trying to win games. Now Matt Stafford is in Los Angeles. That helps out a lot. But this previous year we're having to deal with average to below average quarterback play from Jimmy Garoppolo and Jared Goff respectively. So really the Cardinals, it wouldn't be a shock for them to see that leap into the first position in the NFC West. I think time will tell ultimately if the J.J. Watt signing and him being paired with Chandler Jones is a good pairing.
That's who I was going to bring up.
Because
he's stellar also in the pass rush.
That's one of the premier defensive end edge rusher combos now in the league.
Well, that'll be nice because it's going to alleviate pressure from J.J. Watt.
Sure.
I think they said somebody came up with a statistic. I think 30% of the time J.J. Watt was double teamed or triple teamed.
He gets the Aaron Donald treatment a little bit.
Yeah, he gets it. He gets it. I think kind of rough.
Because really the only other pass rusher they had at Houston while he was there was Whitney Merciless. And
correct.
He's good, but he's not anywhere near the level of Chandler Jones.
Exactly. So I think giving that extra little juice on from Chandler Jones will allow J.J. Watt to kind of come out and actually make some more plays than he did in the previous year. I think what did they say? He said I think they said he had only 5 sacks last season.
Sounds about right.
So for him,
bad year.
I wouldn't. Yeah, not a great year. Not a great year.
not
I
a
don't
good
think there's
year at
really any way to butter that up. But, I mean, especially for the expectation of J.J. Watt, because he is such a great player. I think everybody just holds him higher, which, I mean, it's just how that world works. I mean, but I think it'll be interesting to watch and see how he interacts with Arizona. Now, a lot of people were thinking about his intentions with this. I've seen people talk on the internet. I believe Pat McAfee brought it up on his podcast. But, I mean, it felt like J.J. Watt was chasing a ring and then signs with Arizona. It seems that there's a little bit of contingency there. I mean, do you think Arizona has a strong expectation to win the Super Bowl?
I think they were a pick that people hadn't really thought about. I think because when J.J. Watt said Super Bowl contender, everyone said, oh, Steelers, oh, Bills. Oh,
They thought the big names.
They thought those names. And I think if you look at the Cardinals, I think they have just as good a chance as really any other team in the NFC right now. I mean, outside of Green Bay and Tampa Bay, because besides those two teams, the NFC is kind of wide open for next year.
I mean,
you
the
don't,
Cowboys, but
obviously, when you guys have the Danucci show back after you let Andy Dalton and Dak leave this offseason.
Andy Dalton said, I got to go.
Yeah, Andy was like, nah,
At the beginning of the year, Andy Dalton said, I want to go home. I want to go back to Dallas. Because he's from Texas.
Yeah.
Now he's I'll go somewhere else.
I'll just leave.
I'll just, you know what? I'm good. I don't want to be here. And I think Dak Prescott's on his way to that moment too.
We've talked about it before. You can't blame him.
I mean, I don't think Dallas can afford Dak on the franchise tag.
Probably not.
If he can't afford him on the franchise tag, what do you do?
Yeah, it's
what
tough.
do you do?
It better figure it out.
Yeah, I know, right? So, I mean, it's kind of getting down to that point where I think the next date we have to look forward to is April 15th. It might be the date.
Are you talking about free agency?
Yes.
March 15th.
March 15th,
Yeah,
excuse
so
me.
we're a little under 14, 13 days away from NFL free agency opening up.
Yep. So, that'll be interesting because
Absolutely.
I think by then he has to either he's a free agent or he has to sign the franchise tag.
Yep.
So that's when we will figure out hopefully when what's going to happen with Dak Prescott and.
Well, and you look at the
Dallas
teams
Cowboys.
that have money on the cap. It's odd because a lot of them don't really need a quarterback. The Browns have a lot of cap space. They've got Baker Mayfield locked in. The Jets have a lot of cap space. They don't really have a quarterback. That could be an interesting spot for Dak to land. I wouldn't be surprised, the Jets having all that cap space. Theoretically, you think, okay, well, they've got the second overall pick in the draft. They need to just take one. Well, counterpoint, why not use that second overall pick, trade back, get a lot of more capital to work with? You could sign Dak and Aaron Jones to big-time deals. You've went ahead and cemented two of your offensive centerpieces. They've got a decent receiving core. They spent a high draft pick last year on Denzel Mims, who, if you were unfamiliar with Denzel Mims as a prospect, he is very – I'm not going to call him Julio Jones because that's not who he's comparable to, but he's a bigger receiver who has got very good quickness and decent speed. So very, very freakish profile for Mims. Jamison Crowder's probably going to be a cap casualty, but he was a good slot receiver for them this year. Brashad Perriman, also known as Brick Hands, is also probably going to be a cap casualty for them. So it's going to be interesting to see where the Jets go. There's a lot of possibilities for them. And then another destination people are talking about for quarterbacks is the Bears. I don't personally see them making a move for Dak because they've been talked about as a trade partner for Russell Wilson, but it's just a strange one to me.
And then with Alex Smith coming out of Washington,
Yep.
I mean, he's projected to be released in the next couple of days here. What do you think? I mean, do you think that? Do you think Dak would go to Washington?
I think he would.
I think if the money's right, because I think Washington has a little bit of cash.
And I think Washington, they've kind of got some good players there for him to work with.
I mean, you saw how Alex Smith held up that offense.
Their receivers kind of stink, but other than that.
But, I mean, you put a good quarterback in there. I mean, Alex Smith was able to do some work with his receivers, and I think Dak Prescott can probably do some work as well. And
if by receivers, you mean J.D. McKissick out of the backfield. But I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, for sure. But, it'll be – the Dak situation, I think, is terrible because – I think it just looks bad on the Dallas Cowboys as an organization.
Oh, it's an awful look.
Yeah, and it should be. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think they deserve the bad look because, I mean, I think that they kind of really screwed Dak Prescott over.
You paid everyone except for the guy that makes it go.
Yeah, exactly. And then he proved it. He threw over 400 yards in every single game last season and then gets injured and is out for the rest of season and part of training, I believe. He's going to be, So, I mean, it's a terrible look for the Dallas Cowboys and that organization. And even being a fan of them, I mean, it's annoying.
Yeah.
Because you're just like, I mean, this guy is literally.
It's almost like how many times we're going to have to see the same movie.
Yeah, exactly, right? I mean, how many times are we going to, have to sit through this 8-8 season and then watch our quarterback get hurt and not win any games after losing our starting quarterback. It was the same thing. Same thing with Romo, and then now the same thing with Dak Prescott.
Yep.
It's kind of
How many times will Jerry
broken
Jones
record.
make the same mistake?
Exactly right. Jerry Jones. Do you ever think he'll leave, or do you think he'll die?
When he dies. Yeah.
Do you think so? I think he dies on the Star.
Probably.
On the 50-yard line.
He realizes that his death is incoming. He goes to the Star and commits seppuku.
Get me to Arlington. Thanks, Jerry. All right.
Cheers.
Get on your plane and then get in your Escalade, who I'm sure he has a driver.
No. Jerry's high class. He probably has like a Hummer limo.
Or a Lincoln. I can see him rocking a Lincoln.
Yeah, 100%.
Lincoln Jerry Jones, man.
Yep.
That's it right there.
Yep.
Hey,
Texas
Jerry, you're
oil
welcome
money.
for that promo right there. And Lord gets his get a sign on him. But let's talk about Russell Wilson. I like how you brought Russell Wilson up because that's another big time quarterback who we didn't think was going to leave. And I think is he a free agent this year?
No, he just signed a big deal. He doesn't
Yeah.
want to leave, but at the same time, he's like, look, like you're as the organization, you're not listening to me. Like, I'm
Right.
telling you, like this is what we need, and you're just not listening.
Right. That's what I was trying to. So I didn't know is that he had a few years left on his contract. I forgot that he had just signed one.
Yeah.
What teams do you think would want him that we wouldn't think about?
Well,
I mean, like
he's
what are those
already-
deeper teams that are just kind of like?
Well, here's the thing. He's already said these are the teams I will play for.
Oh, that's true.
It's-
Yes, he
The
did.
Bears are on that list. The Cowboys are on that list.
Yes,
I don't remember if the Saints are on that
Saints
list or
are
not,
on it.
but it doesn't matter. The Saints don't have enough cap space.
and I saw something on Twitter, but I think it was one of those troll accounts, so I didn't really
Mm-hmm.
believe it. Somebody said that Drew Brees is back,
No, Drew Brees. So
like confirmed going to play.
What I've seen, no, that's incorrect.
I
So
thought
Drew
so.
Brees, from what I understand, at the start of the new league year, is going to restructure his contract to get it down to league minimum and then retire, and they can put him on the retired list and
Gotcha.
basically get all that dead money off of the Saints.
Gotcha. That makes more sense. Interesting. So, I mean, Russell Wilson wouldn't be a bad landing job for the Saints.
No, if they can afford him. The problem is affording him.
Yeah, that's a true statement too. I don't know. Do you think he would mesh well with Tyson Hill? Nope.
I don't. To me, Taysom Hill's irrelevant in that situation.
I believe so too.
Like if Russell Wilson is a Ferrari, Taysom Hill is a lawnmower. He's a Cub Cadet lawnmower.
Okay, that's fair.
Like Taysom Hill is a gadget player at best. Like this is going to be my little rant for the show here.
Okay, I
Sean
like
Payton
this.
being an offensive genius and then wanting to stick by Taysom Hill is absolutely ludicrous. It
Really?
is insane. It's insanity. It makes no sense. Taysom Hill can't throw. He couldn't throw in college. That's why he plays tight end.
That's why he plays
It makes no
everybody.
sense. You've got Jameis Winston. Like Jameis Winston came in and played good the little bit he came in and played this
Yep.
year. And you're going to tell me, no, you know what? We have an actually trained quarterback, but we're going to throw this guy that should be stocking groceries in at quarterback instead, or should be playing running back because that's what his actual position is. Like I have no patience for it. You're supposed to be like Sean Payton. The people, media in the NFL want to make him out as some offensive genius, and you're playing a tight end at quarterback. It makes no sense. It's honestly like mind-boggling. As a Falcons fan, I love it because you're gonna like if they do start Taysom Hill, they're gonna stink, and it's gonna help us better. But at some point, like you have to ask yourself, like, is this a coach letting his own hubris get in the way of what is actually good for the team? And I think at some point that yes, it is.
Okay, so what do you think the right choice is? I mean, if you think so,
If I'm-
Jameis Winston is still with the Saints, correct? Or did they?
He is going to be a free agent. I
He will
believe.
be a free agent. So I would imagine he'll be leaving. I don't think he'll be staying with the Saints.
To me, if I'm Jameis Winston, if the Saints, if I think I can win that job, I don't mind signing with the Saints because then
You
that
gotta beat
gives you
Taysom Hill, but yeah.
1 year window. You can if you're Jameis Winston, you can sign a prove it contract, prove it, and then cash out next year when the free agent quarterback market's not going to be as good.
Yeah, I guess that is true. I mean, the Saints. Okay, do you think the Saints?
Drew
have
Brees held the Saints back this year.
Yes, I
That's
agree.
that's not a secret. Alvin Kamara was the engine that made that offense go for many of the weeks that Drew Brees was in there.
Yeah. So I mean, do you think that with either? I don't think the Saints are a Super Bowl contender with Jameis Winston at quarterback. I think you put Russell Wilson in there. I think you have a much better chance.
If the Saints get Russell Wilson, they should instantly be a favorite. They should be right up there with the Buccaneers as a favorite for the division. I think they
Wow.
leapfrog the Packers.
Well,
personally.
do you remember I called Saints going to Super Bowl beginning of this year when the season started? Close. Made the playoffs.
You were a couple teams off, but
Couple
you were
teams
within the
off.
division. So.
But I mean,
I think Russell Wilson's that good. I just
He
really
is
do
that
because
good.
I mean, you give Russell Wilson, I mean, not to say that Seattle hasn't had a competent group of receivers, but, like, you give him Michael Thomas, who many consider a top receiver in the NFL, and I use the word consider because I do not agree, but you give him, Michael Thomas, you give him, Alvin Kamara as a weapon. That's easily the best weapon Russell Wilson's had out of the backfield, at least.
Well, I mean,
a good offensive line and a good defense. You saw the last time Russell Wilson had a good defense and a good line and run game to work with, the Seahawks were Super Bowl contenders every year.
So, I mean, the honest truth is, Russell Wilson, I think a great spot would be the Cowboys.
Yeah.
I mean, you have 3 strong receivers for Russell Wilson. You have Zeke, who can run the ball. Zeke has had a couple of.
Zeke got paid and just took the year off.
That's exactly what he did.
That's
That's exactly what he did.
Zeke got paid and was
I
like,
wasn't
going
to say it in those words, but that is exactly what happened.
Zeke's out here looking like James Harden when he was at the Rockets earlier this year. Whenever James Harden was wearing the fat suit to try and get traded, and then all of a sudden got skinny again. I still don't know how he pulled that magic trick.
I don't know how he did. I wish I could do that, but
really
it happens to the best of us. But but for real, you have some great receivers for Russell Wilson on the Cowboys. Zeke, I'm sure. I really do think he took the year off. I don't think he counted this season as like a real season, especially after Dak.
Like, I'm good.
Yeah, he said, I got paid. So
yeah.
I think if you put more motivation into Zeke, and then you have Russell
Wilson.
Wilson.
Pollard should be all the motivation he needs because Tony Pollard outplayed Zeke last season.
Oh, yeah, he did, 100%. And I said that actually the year before last.
Mm-hmm.
I said that Tony Pollard has an opportunity to actually outplay Zeke.
And he did.
And he did. And which, not shocked by it, but
it's
felt
interesting
like
for sure.
I felt like Zeke didn't do a whole lot on purpose. So that's why I was saying. I feel like the motivation just wasn't there.
It's not a tangent I'm going to start today, but it kind of goes back to the point that running back does not matter in the NFL anymore.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Because, you look at the Buccaneers and, the Buccaneers who won the Super Bowl, their running backs were Leonard Fournette, who, yes, was a high draft pick, but stinks. Rojo, Ronald Jones, who was a second-round draft pick and was bad until this year. And then they had Shady McCoy, Keyshawn Vaughn, rookie from Vanderbilt, who is 3,000 years old as a rookie, and did not play well this year. And I believe their running back after all those guys was Dare Ogunbowale was at the Jaguars, actually. So
last topic, because I forgot to bring this last topic
very
up.
quickly.
Seattle Mariners, it was their president who has now resigned, was talking about arbitration, keeping players down in AAA, not allowing them to come up because they want to keep the ownership of them for that first 6 years. Definitely one of those big topics in baseball where it's hard to kind of comment on because teams do have the right to do that. It doesn't make it right, if that makes sense.
It's not a good look.
Most notably, Ronald Acuna Jr., it happened to him. His rookie season got brought up middle of the season. It was past that deadline, so the team actually was able to use him for the rest of the season in the major leagues and then keep him for 6 years after that. So they were able to kind of use him for a little bit more, and that's just kind of the way baseball has worked. But it has raised questions, and the owner for the Seattle Mariners was definitely criticized for it.
As he should have been.
It's just kind of a bad moral look, I guess, is what
even
it is.
if you want to think that and think like, oh, yeah, this is awesome, you just don't really say that.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of keep your mouth shut, and then you move on with your day. But unfortunately, he has put light into it, and so now it looks like it's going to be addressed more, and we shall see how that goes. But
any last comments, Brad?
They're special peacocks. You got to let them fly, man.
I love this. This is
Brad's
awesome.
my favorite. That does it here for Crunch Time. We shall see you next week in the studios at 91.9 FM.